Hello, this is John Baker with another NX Quick Tip video. Today we're going to talk about another NX11 enhancement, and this is called the flattening and forming. So I'm going to switch to a part that's a freeform surface. So there's a surface, it's a swept surface through 3 different profiles. And what I want to do is I want to flatten this out, because this represents, let's say in my case, it represents, let's say, the side of an aircraft, in this case maybe a model airplane or something, and I want to put some portholes down the side or windows. But I really can only add those to the model in the flattened state, so I need to flatten it out and then move those portholes back onto the model. Now we've added some new tools in NX11. In this case we have a new tool called flattening and forming. It's similar to the wrap unwrap that you could do in the past when you're dealing with cylinders or cones, shapes on cylinders and cones, but now this will work with just a freeform, any general shape of the surface. So I select the flattening routine, and I select the surface. I specify an origin, just a point, so I'm going to just grab this corner here, and a direction, and basically I get my flattened sheet. Now this just formed out here. And somebody say, well, gee, how accurate was this? Well, I can actually go back in here and I can turn on an option here that kind of shows where higher areas of deformation are. And the red areas is where there's a certain amount of deformation. It's still pretty good. And this in the blue area here is where there's virtually no deformation. So it kind of gives you an idea of how accurately it has unfolded that sheet. What this uses is it's not based on any kind of physics. This is based purely on mathematics. It uses a preservation of area method, sort of like breaking it up into like little finite elements and then mapping those elements down from the curved down onto a flat area, and then trying to minimize the changes in the area between the area of the cell of the element up here versus the area down here. And this shows you how accurate it was. So now I have my sheet here, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a curve to my model. So I'm going up here, I'm going to add a isometric curve right here, a isocline curve, and I'm going to set it at 0 degrees on this surface here, and I'm going to specify this direction. So that would be sort of like the shadow curve. So it'd be sort of the silhouette curve. If I'm looking straight down, it'd be the silhouette curve on that surface. So now I have that curve onto there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to reorder that curve and bring it ahead of the flattening, because now when I go and edit the flattening, I can go back and add additional objects, in this case this curve. So now I've mapped it down onto the model as well. Now let's go into the sketcher, and I'm going to pick this face, and I'm going to go create a circle. And we're just going to put it right here on here. There we go. And so now I've got this circle on here. And then we're going to go in and I'm going to pattern the geometry. So let's select here. And I'm going to go along this sheet. Reverse the direction here. And so now I've got these circles are lying on the flattened sheet. Now I can go back. So what I do now is I go back to my function, go back to surfaces, go back to the forming and flattening. Now I'm going to change it to the forming mode, and in the forming mode I pick my object that was flattened, and then I pick the objects on here, and they get mapped back to the surface. Then I can go back into surfacing here, go into trim. I'm going to pick the sheet, pick these elements here, and so now I have my holes that I've moved from the flat sheet back up onto here. So what I've done is I've taken this freeform body and very simply flattened it out using a new flattening tool based on, like I said, it's based on math. And it's very good for this type of application, particularly for moving information from a face down onto a flat. And then I've added some additional geometry here, and then I've used the forming tool, which basically is like reversing the process, where I'm taking elements that are now in the flat state and moving them back up onto the formed state. So this can be a very useful tool for moving features, curves, areas, boundaries, and so on, either from a freeform to flat or from the flat back up to the freeform. It's not really intended to replace things like flattening for sheet metal and so on, but it is very good for this type of work and for dealing with more complex freeform shapes. Thank you very much.